plate tectonism. Here, for example, just see guys here. Okay, see here if you see, for example, so wherever you have a passive margin, okay, wherever you have a passive margin means where the plate tectonism is not that much active, wherever you have a passive margin, in those areas you will see that the continental shelf is extended more, means the length is more. But wherever you say active margin means wherever you see this particular convergent plate boundary movement. So here you can see in the Pacific Ring of Fire, okay, here we have so many interactions. So wherever you have these tectonism which is active, so there you will see that the length of continental shelf is very much small, okay. And the areas where you see that we have a some sort of passive continental margin, or let's say passive, or let's say tectonism is not that much robust, there you will see that they have a more widest continental shelf. The length of continental shelf will be more broader when it comes to these areas, okay. So this width variation is basically because of the, we can say, passive margin. And narrow shelf you will see, I mean narrow shelves you will see wherever you have an active margin, okay. So here you can see that we have an active margin, Pacific Ocean, okay. And when it comes to the more width, so that more width is there when it comes to the like a passive margin. Now types of continental shelf means, passive shelf means tectonically stable, and it will be what, more and more wider, okay. It will be like this, more wider. Lastly, we discussed about the Siberian shelf. So that Siberian shelf is extended up to 1500 kilometer. It's because of these factors. Here you can see, for example, okay. Active shelf, if it is there, so it is tectonically unstable and it will be narrow. It is narrow, okay. Here you can see we have a 20 to 50 kilometer. That is what the continental shelf. Then ice covered shelf is there in the polar region, and you will see delta shelf when it comes to the river sediments, okay. So these four types of continental shelf are actually observed on our Earth's surface specifically. Now this continental shelf is highly productive biologically. Why? Because when it comes to the insolation, so insolation is there, and this insolation is actually able to penetrate up to a depth of 200 meter. And I told you that the continental shelf, the depth of continental shelf is roughly from 0 to 200 meter. And now that zone is being known as photic zone, means the sunlight is present in that area, and that sunlight is very much vital for the organisms, those who are present in continental shelf, and for their biological metabolism activities. So shallow water allows what, sunlight, and shallow water also allows what, nutrient mixing when it comes to the fishing grounds, for example. So here you will notice that in the continental shelf, there are major fishing grounds, and these major fishing grounds are always there on the continental shelf areas. High plankton productivity is there. Yesterday, or let's say in our previous session, we discussed about some sort of fishing related aspect. Newfoundland, I told you, and in Laurentian type of climate, I also told you that with respect to the coast of Japan, fishing is prominent. Why? Because we have ideal conditions. When you have ideal conditions, planktons will be there, and wherever you have a good growth of planktons, there you will see more fishes are there. So what we can say that this continental shelf is the area which is having a less depth, and as there is a less depth, sunlight is present. As sunlight is present, more dissolved oxygen is there. As more dissolved oxygen is there, that is required for the respiration of the marine organisms, those who are living in water. And yes, those same things are very much required or vital for the other organisms which are there in ocean, okay. So those activities are confined to continental shelf. So in continental shelf, you will see that there is a huge diversity when it comes to the marine resources. Major fishing grounds are there in the continental shelf. So Newfoundland and Japan coast, if you see, so there you will get to know that we have a huge continental shelf there. All right. And yes, when we have a more and more water from the continental or land areas, so with that water you will see that some dead organisms could be there, okay. Some dead organisms could be there. With that water, if you see, for example, there might be some sort of dead vegetation as well. Now that dead organisms or these dead vegetation would going to deposit here in this particular, we can say, continental shelf area, and when they will get deposit over the period of time, they will convert into fossils, And these continental shelf areas are very much vital when it comes to oil and gas reserves. Here on continental shelf, you will get to know that these things would be converted into the fossils. It would take thousands of years, perhaps years, but you will get some sort of oils or oil resources here. Mumbai High, offshore, it is there. So we have a continental shelf. It will take time, perhaps thousand, sometimes million years. Okay. So when we have a thick sediments, they bury the organic matter, and that's how you will see we have these things. And yes, continental shelf actually provides sand, gravel, and minerals. So they can also be extracted from here. Okay, whatever is being deposited, because of the gradual slope, more deposition will take place. Yes, we have many ports and harbors, and these can be developed along with the continental shelf. Okay. When you have a gentle slope, so that gentle slope allows shallow water, and shallow water is preferable when it comes to the navigation. However, it is also the connecting factor with the coastline, so majority of the ports would be located here, and that is very much essential factor, essential economic factor for the continental shelf apart from fishing. These are the particular links between the land and deep ocean. They transfer sediment from continents to ocean as well, and they also make a functional economy by the port activities, trade activities, navigable waters are there. So continental shelf, they are very much vital when it comes to the human life. Next, the when the alignment of slope is becoming steeper in this way, so this alignment is basically known as what? Continental slope. I told you that you have to see that how the topography is look like, and here the topography is steeper, for example. So this is what being known as slope, continental slope. Remember, continental slope and continental shelf both are the feature of continental plate itself. So continental slope is basically a steeper zone, and it is actually the transition zone between the deep water, and it is a transition zone between the deep water and you can say continental shelf. Okay, so like it is what? A transition zone between the deep ocean floor, and it is there with the continental shelf and deep sea plains. It connects the shallow and deep ocean region. This is one. Shallow means the continental shelf, which is actually the shallow water region, okay, and the deep water region which is there. So both are actually being connected by this continental shelf, or you can say it act like a transition zone between these two. Slope is beginning at the shelf break point, I told you, and there is a sudden increase in gradient. Depth, I told you depth. The depth of this particular continental shelf could be from 200 meter to almost 4 kilometer. So from here, for example, it is deeper. Okay, from 200 meter to almost 4 kilometer, you can say. This is what the depth of continental slope. Okay, and it descends rapidly seaward, and if you move from the continents, or let's say these coastline, towards the sea area, so it will have some sort of slope alignment towards the seaward. So as you move in the sea, it is getting more and more steeper. Okay, continental slopes are prominent along the active margins. We have a same aspect which we have learned as of now. The tectonism will lead to the some sort of bending or destruction of this particular continental slope, and as a result of that, you will see that the continental slope, they are very much present when it comes to the active margin, means where you have a subduction, where you have a convergence of two different tectonic plates. So tectonic activity creates sharp relief. It is the tectonic activity which is actually creating the sharp relief, or let's say the continental slope. However, it would take perhaps thousands, millions, or billions of years in order to form. We also have some sort of sedimentation here as well. The water which is there, we have a local currents, then we have a turbidity in water. So because of that, though water will have a huge speed here, for example, but some sort of thick deposition will also be take place. Very thick deposition will take place here as well, and gravity and currents, they will going to remove this particular material, and there will be an erosion, and that is being known as submarine canyon. Here we have a submarine canyons where they are very much common. Now this region, when it comes to the biological productivity, it is very much low, because that is the depth at which that is the depth in which the sunlight cannot penetrate, or sunlight is not able to penetrate in those areas. However, in the upper portion, let's say at the 200 meter, you may have a finding of some sort of organisms, those who are there, but even beyond a 500 meter, there is hardly any species which can survive. There may be some exceptions, always exceptions are there, but broadly you won't found any marine organisms which can be observed here on the downslope area of continental slope. On the upslope area, or I would say in the uppermost portion of continental slope, you can observe some sort of like a living form of life. Marine organisms could be there, those who have some sort of adaptability in order to survive with the less deficient dissolved oxygen, and even in the dark conditions they can survive in the upslope areas. But beyond the 500-meter depth, you hardly see any marine organism which can be found in the deep water or beyond the depth of 500 meter. Hardly you might see. Okay, 99% of organisms are there with respect to this 200-meter level of water, but we have some rare species which could be there. Who knows, at the bottom we might have some sort of species we might not have seen as of now. I mean, in movies you might have seen. We may have an eternal. Okay, who knows, that could be in the deeper part of ocean basin, and sometimes there might be a possibility that that person, or I mean hypothetical or imagined person, that could be come out. We might have seen that Eternal movie, Marvel Studios. So they have connected, or they have made this entire volcanism as a one living entity who is actually the superhuman, and he is trying to we can say capture or control the all population which is found on the different continents. So it is that like that concept, maybe hypothetical, but who knows, this could be there. Before the outbreak of COVID, none of us expected that we could have a disasters in such a way, right? So who knows, it could be. Well, coming out from the science fiction, and let's talk about the reality. So biologically, if you see, biological productivity of this region is very much low. However, in the upper slope, I told you, you can expect some sort of biological activities because sunlight and nutrition are very much limited at that particular slope areas. So continental slope mark the edges of continental crust. Yes, oceanic crust begin beyond this. Economic use of slope is very much limited. Okay, at the great depth you may have some sort of like a finding of minerals, but because of the depth there is a challenge that how you would going to extract it, because at the present level or at the present given technological factors, you cannot extract minerals from these particular steeper slopes where you have water as well. And continental slope actually influences deep sea depositions. Okay, the water which is there, and when you have a deposition, there might be a possibility that some sort of depositions could be there over the oceanic crust, or let's say when you have some sort of tectonism, as a result of tectonism this continental slope may destabilize, and as a result of its destabilization there might be some sort of erosion, and that eroded material can be deposited on the oceanic crust or trench if it is there. Overall, continental slope is a steep transitional area and it links the shelf with the deep ocean. Moving ahead, continental rise. Here you can see continental rise. Okay, this is what the continental rise. Continental rise. So continental rise is gentle slope, and that is what at the base of continental slope. So it is a gentle actually. So shelf, slope, and rise. So continental slope are actually the one which is actually lying between the abyssal plain and continental slope. So hereafter you will see that we have a abyssal plain. We have a flat topographical feature over the ocean surface, over the ocean floor, over the ocean floor. So that will be known as abyssal plain. And here we have this region which is actually being known as continental rise. So continental rise is a transition area which actually connect the abyssal plain with the continental slope areas. Okay. Continental rise begin where the steep slope end. Okay. So the point at which this steepness is getting less and it is getting gentler. So when the orientation of slope is changing, we used to give a different name. In landform, we have a same thing. Okay. I hope you remember the form of landforms which we have covered in our previous session. So in landforms, we have a same thing. How slope used to look like, whether it is gentle, whether it is steeper. Accordingly, we used to give them name, and the process which is associated for the formation of that particular slope, we assign a specific name to it. Now, depth of continental, we can say continental rise is ranging somewhere from 300 meter to 500 meter. This is what the depth, at that much depth in water, 3 to 5 kilometer, I would say, at that depth we used to found continental rise. It's a huge, I mean, it is not or it is very much difficult to reach at that particular depth. Very much difficult it is. So it grades smoothly into the abyssal plain. It is there, and continental rise have a very gentle gradient. We talk about this. There might be some sort of thick accumulation of sediments which could be found on the continental rise, and it is wider than continental slope. Okay, continental slope is steeper, but when it comes to its width, it is very much less. But this portion of continental rise is very much broader when it comes to the horizontal expansion. Vertical expansion is more in continental slope. Okay, so sediments spread lateral. Lateral means horizontal. So the sediments which are there, those sediments are actually expanding the lateral, we can say, deposition, and as a result of that, the continental rise is much broader with respect to the continental slope. So that was the idea with respect to the continental rise. Now this continental rise is well developed along the passive margin. Wherever you have a passive margin, it is well developed, means it would be broad. Okay, and wherever you see, for example, poor development, so these poor developments will be there over the active margins. Wherever you have a plate tectonics, suppose we have a interaction of plates, so what would happen? This continental rise may get bent, that continental rise may get some sort of fractures, it may get some sort of compression, and if there is a compression, we may have some sort of sea mounts, for example, we may have some sort of volcanic eruption if it is get fractured because of the convergence of two different plates. So what we can say, that it is subjected to what? Some sort of, we can say, continental activities, and because of the continental activities, I mean tectonic activities are well developed based on the active and passive margin. Active means wherever you have a junction, wherever you have a convergence of two plates. Passive means when you have a region which is tectonically stable over a longer period of time. So continental rise is basically poorly developed wherever you have this particular active. All right, wherever you have a active margin, and wherever you have a passive margin, for example, so passive margin, because there we have a large sediment supply and tectonic activity is stable, so you would see broad extension. Okay, continental slope will like this. Here the continental slope will be like this because it may be subjected to continental or let's say tectonic activities. Composed mainly of fine sediments. Here the fine sediments are there. Turbidity currents are also responsible for deposition of very fine particles like silt and clay. They are getting deposited over the continental rise. Biological activities very low on continental rise because there is no penetration of sunlight and rest of the activities are not taking place. Economic significance is very much less when it comes to this area because at that depth it is very much difficult to harness or to extract minerals. Now this is what the particular area which is actually mask of the irregular relief which is found at the bottom of ocean. And yes, here you will see that we have a sediment accumulation, and this is what the final stage when it comes to the particular portion of continental areas. And here you will see that this is the portion which is actually connecting with the abyssal plain. This is here again, you can see guys, this is the shelf. Okay, this is the slope, and yes, wherever you have some sort of a gradual aspect, so here you will see continental rise, and then we have a abyssal plain. And this variation here, if you see, for example, focus, we have a variation 1 2 3. 1 2 3. Now this variation is actually showing what these different layers of sedimentation which is actually being taken place here, and the size of sediments is getting decreased, means it is getting more and more smaller if you move seaward. Okay, so here some big particles will be there, here some big particles will be here comparatively fine, or here super fine could be there. So that's how the size is actually decreasing if you move seaward. It's because of the erosional action of water and the processes which are associated here. Abyssal plain, if you see, so abyssal plain is a flat, you can say it is a flat region, and this flat region is there in the deeper part of ocean. And here you can expect that the thick layers of sediments are also there, which are actually being there because of the influence of gravity. Suppose we have a sediments here, so it is the gravity which will lead to the deposition of these on the abyssal plain. They lie beyond the continental rise. Abyssal plain may have a depth which is ranging from 3 to 6 kilometer. Fine sediment settle here at a huge depth, and like here you will see that we have a extremely gentle slopes. Extreme gentle slopes are here. Biological life is very much sparse. No sunlight is there, so very little food availability is there. And these abyssal plains actually cover the large oceanic areas, means the major oceanic areas which are found on our Earth's surface, they are actually being comprised with respect to the abyssal plain. Abyssal plain is the broadest feature of our ocean. Okay, they are the most extensive deep ocean, we can say, features over the ocean. They are more, and yes, they represent the calm zone. Here you have a calm water conditions. With respect to the other continental shelf, you will see some sort of water activity. At the continental slope, you might expect that there might be a huge downsloping movement of water. As a result of that, there is some sort of, we can say, erosion, and submarine canyon are formed because of these things, because of erosion, I would say. Mid oceanic ridges, here you can see, and I hope you have a clarity with these aspects we have covered in plate tectonics, that because of the divergent plate boundary movements, the oceanic plate is moving away from each other, and this cavity is being filled by the lava which is actually coming out. And this is how the global pattern in which you can expect you have a mid oceanic ridges, series of mid oceanic ridges are there globally. In Indian Ocean they are there, in Atlantic Ocean they are there, even in the Pacific Ocean they are there. So mid-oceanic ridges are basically long, continuous submarine mountain chains which are actually being found at the ocean floor. And these mid-oceanic ridges are formed wherever you have a plates. Those plates used to move away from each other, a feature of divergent plate boundary movement. Okay, like this, magma is there, and this magma rise will be there, solidify it would be, and as a result of that, it would create a new oceanic crust. And there will be a symmetry when it comes to the rocks which are there, or like there would be a symmetry when it comes to the low lying hills which are found on the mid oceanic regions. So there is a huge symmetry on this side, and on this side you will see almost symmetry, not 100%, but most broad feature of symmetries are available here in these particular mid-oceanic ridges. These ridges can run through the center of ocean. We have covered all these things. This is what the resemblance of sea floor spreading. We have already covered in plate tectonics that not only the continents but the ocean floors are also dynamic, and this is what one of the way in which the ocean floor is dynamism is actually being depicted here. And we have a symmetry on both sides here. It is what like the abyssal plain, and like with respect to the abyssal plain, when you see some sort of high elevated areas, these high elevated areas at the sea floor submerged completely under the water, depth at the depth of 3 to 6 kilometer, at that much depth we have abyssal plain. So these mid-oceanic ridges are also found at that depth, you can say. Okay, so it is there, and hot less magma is there, and volcanic activity, like it is there, uplifting of magma, it is also there when it comes to this particular mid-oceanic ridges. Then we have an oceanic trench. So this oceanic trench here you can see, for example, this is what the portion where the continental and oceanic plates are actually being taking place, and converging or convergence is taking place. As a result of that, subduction zone is formed. So these trenches are long, narrow, and very deep sea floor depressions. Okay, they are what? Long, they are narrow, and they are very deep sea floor depressions which are there, and they are actually being there because of the convergence. I hope you remember with respect to the plate tectonics, they are formed because of the bending and sinking of oceanic plates. They occur at the convergent plate boundaries. I told you we have already covered these aspects. So trenches are the deepest part. Here you can see Mariana Trench is deeper at the depth of 11 kilometer. Okay, Mount Everest is 8 kilometer in terms of its elevation, but Mariana Trench is 11 kilometer. Means if you pick Mount Everest and if you try to fit that in particular Mariana Trench, it would be fitted completely, and thereafter vacuum would also be there. Okay, some portion would also be there, not vacuum, some portion would also be there. So trenches are the deepest part. They are the form, or let's say they are formed because of the rapid downward movement. Here you can see we have a rapid down. See, we have already covered these things in plate tectonics. If you want to see how trenches are formed, just go and see that particular session on like a convergent plate boundary movement, there you will get a clarity that what actually are the trenches. So that's why I'm just taking it in a more broader or without discussing in detail. And these depth usually at the 600 meter. Continuous subduction is there, and trenches run parallel to continents, and Mariana Trench and Tonga Trench. You will see Japanese Trench at 28,000 feet. This is what the depth of Japanese trench. All of these trenches you will see, or you might aware that all of these trenches are located in the Pacific Ocean. Why? Because the Pacific Ring of Fire convergence is taking place. Because of that, deeper trenches are being found there. Okay. Strong earthquake and volcanic activities could be observed along with the trenches. I hope you have a clarity. Sediment deposition is very much limited. Steep slopes are there. Trenches are zone of crustal destruction. And yes, wherever you have a oceanic crust, and that is old if it is, so it is the trench which is actually recycling it. However, the pace or the time period which is there, that could vary throughout the region. Now let's talk about the minor relief feature. Minor relief feature, let's focus on that. All right, so minor relief features. Here in the minor relief feature, you can see we have a submarine canyons. Okay, so submarine canyons are there on the continental shelf. Okay, and they are because of the vertical, we can say down cutting, which is because of the water. Okay, as water is moving on the steeper slope, so more energy is there, and like this further energy is intensified under the influence of gravity. That same aspect which we discussed in the river landform, we have the same thing here as well. So we have a deep narrow valleys on the continental shelf and continental slope. They are being cut by the action of river, and we have a turbidity currents as well. Because of that, you will see submarine canyons are actually found. They are extended from the coast to deep basins, and they transport sediments downslope. Means wherever you have a erosion, so there will be some sort of deposition here on the abyssal plain, or it may be deposition on the continental rise areas. Okay, I hope you can relate it now. And if you see the example, we have a Grand Canyon of Colorado River and Hudson Canyon. Hudson Canyon is there in North America, and this Colorado River is there in, for example, South. For example, it is also there in the North America. So there you will see that we have a deepest submarine canyons which are actually being found. Seamounts. Now, what are seamounts? Here you can see seamounts. So seamounts are basically isolated underwater volcanic mountain. They could be formed, for example, might be result of fissure eruption. They might be formed because of the deposition of lava, for example. So seamounts are isolated underwater volcanic mountains, and they are formed because of the submarine volcanic eruption. We might have some sort of fracture of the oceanic floor as well, just like fissure, for example, just like faults, for example, which used to be found on the continental areas. So we could have some sort of faults over the oceanic floor as well, and like from that particular fracture there might be a possibility that lava may appear or lava may emerge out, and that lava will get instantaneously cooled because its location with respect to the sea floor, water is there, so it will have a quick cooling, and as a result of that you will see these particular underground structure known as seamount. They do not reach to the sea surface. Okay, and volcanic growth remains below the sea level, for example. So Emperor Seamount you will see, which is there in the Hawaiian island. So that is what the well developed seamount which we have observed as of now on our earth surface. You will find guyards. So guyards are basically, you can see here we have a flat top seamounts. So when you have a flat top seamounts, suppose you have a seamount, and if this seamount is flat top, so this is being called as what? Guyard. Like it may be because of the erosion, because of the flattening, because of the like a surface water action, flattening could be there, and they are now completely submerged, or they are underwater structures, you can say. Coral reefs. Now coral reefs are actually the limestone structure. Means in the coral reefs we have polyps. Okay, we have what? Polyps. Now, what are polyps? Polyps are tiny small animals, and these tiny small animals are living with the zooxanthellae. There is a one like alga which is being there. So alga means plant. So like there is some sort of symbiotic relationship between the coral polyps and zooxanthellae, and as a result of that you will see that the color of alga is there, which is being found here, for example. So when you have these coral reefs, so they are the limestone structure, they are built by the coral organism, I told you, polyps. And coral secrete calcium carbonate skeletons. They form in warm and shallow water and clear seas. Means corals are also being found on the continental shelf areas, okay, but they will also going to modify the topography in a more regional manner. So that's why they are the feature of minor topographical features. Sunlight and temperature are very much vital for the survival of coral reefs. So that's why they are being there in the continental shelf areas. Lastly, you can see atoll. So atolls are here, you can see, for example, atolls are actually the ring shaped coral reefs. This is what the atoll, okay. So this is how cross section, this is how from the top view you can see. We'll have a more detailed overview about this, okay. So as of now, just have a generalized overview, then we will be discussing in a more detailed manner. So atoll are the rising coral reefs, and like we have a enclosing lagoon which is being found, and they developed because of the sinking volcanic island, which is basically because of the uplifting of these corals or the coral skeletons which are there, and they represent the final stage of coral reef evolution. Means thereafter, after the atoll, you will see there is a more coral reef kind of structures. Means there is a particular structures like this, the ring like structure is there, and these ring like structures are being known as coral reefs. So coral reefs would be found when it comes to the evolution stage of this entire process. Volcanic core, if it is there, so that could also submerge with the volcanic volcanic core if it is there, or volcanic mountain if it is there, that could submerge with the corals, as corals would going to have a continuous growth. Here you can see Lakshadweep Island in India will have a same feature, okay. So corals are what? Polyps, and these polyps can survive in shallow water. So in order to survive, what they will do, they're going to stick on these shallow water, okay. Here you have a shallow water, so on this particular volcano, or let's say land part in sea, they will going to stick here, okay, and they will have what? Death. When there is a death, it will remain stick. Means the calcium carbonate is remain on this particular, we can say, volcanic mountains. And if it is like this, for example, okay, if it is like this, for example, so this is what the fringing reef. If it is further evolved, means here you have a more polyps, and if these polyps will die, they will act like what? The more deposition. If more polyps are there, if they will die, there will be a more deposition. Lastly, you will see that you have a one water, another water, another water. Now this water is separated from this water, this one is separated from two. And ultimately, when you have a continuous aspect like this, if there is a rising continuous, so you will see, you will have this kind of ring structure which are being formed. So they are being called as lagoon. So there is a isolation of water from the ocean. So lagoons have a complete isolation from the sea water. That's why lagoon will have some sort of brackish water. Means the salinity of lagoons will be less than the sea water, but that would be higher than the fresh water or river water, you can say. Then you have a guyards. So guyards, I told you, they are the flat top seamounts, and wave erosion is there. Because of that, they used to be found. We have covered this thing. All right, so that's all about this particular session. In the next session, we will be discussing about the temperature of ocean waves, that how ocean water, that how the temperature is a main determinant or the main action when it comes to the ocean water. Till then, take care, study hard, bye.